Hello.
Blair, this is Jason Goodman. How are you?
All right. How are you?
Pretty good. I got your message about Steemit.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks for giving me a buzz.
Yeah. So, what did you want to share with me about it?
Well, I mean, let's see. I haven't been a follower for all that long, but at the end of one of your recent conversations, I think it was with Phil McConnell,
Hmm.
you added, I think Steam is a Ponzi, and so is VTube. So
Yeah.
I just wanted to, you know, you, honestly, when I started 2 years ago, I said some of the same things.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted to give you an opportunity to like see where that was coming from, and then see if I can address some of those concerns. Because what I don't want is like, if your posts are getting viewed by 50,000 people, I'd prefer not to see um, good truth or good truthing mixed with slander against a blockchain that I happen to think is a pretty good force for good.
Hmm.
And I didn't start that way. Like Steam was my first sort of cryptocurrency experience and all that. And I started 6 months after the thing was founded, so it's not like I'm like a brand like I was here from day one or anything. But
Hmm.
I've come to really like this place. So before I see a channel that has content that I like, kind of run around and bash this place, I figured I'd just give you a chance to ask questions. I mean, you're welcome to go bash it if after this if you still want to, but I'm hoping to provide good enough answers that you don't feel inclined to do that.
Well, do you work for Steemit or you're just a Steemit user?
Um, I have a gray zone. So how familiar are you with blockchain technologies in general?
I mean, I'm aware that it's a distributed ledger. It's, rather than a centralized computer server, it's distributed over multiple peers, and that's basically, encrypted, and that's basically the extent of my knowledge of it.
So a lot of the tokens that are out there, you have to mine them, and to mine them, you have to go solve a complex algorithm.
Yeah, that
Uh,
I'm aware of. Yeah.
all right. So Steam is not one of the ones where you actually have to mine it. Um, the challenge with mining is that it's incredibly resource intensive and it can be really slow too. And that's why you have like it can take 30 minutes to several hours to go confirm blocks through Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Um, what Steam ended up doing was they said, look, instead of having every single computer on the planet have the ability to go verify these accounts, we're just going to elect people. So there will be specific servers that people elect to go basically allow the blockchain to go process these transactions much faster. So Steam has whereas Bitcoin and some of the other blockchains can take 30 minutes to multiple hours to go confirm a transaction. Steam is generally confirmed in about, it confirms it, or the first confirmation is usually within 3 seconds, and then after that it's within 30 seconds or less. And that's because you don't need consensus across millions of computers. You need consensus across 20 different computers. And
Doesn't that dramatically reduce the security, the redundancy?
there's, well, let's see. The math ends up being that in order to go get a bad actor built into the system, you need 14 of those computers to be in cahoots with one another.
Doesn't seem
So
that
you would have
difficult to do.
that's possible. I mean, I think that's a valid concern of some of the people that have brought this up before. Although the thing that I would share about that is that the way that you elect people is you have an instantaneous ability to go vote them and unvote them. So when people are starting to be bad actors, you don't have to like wait 2 years, 4 years, 8 years, or indefinitely to get rid of them. You simply unvote them, and they can no longer serve the function of witness,
Hmm.
which is what that role is called.
Right. Well,
So, look, I'm one of those witnesses. So again, I started
what does that
here.
mean that you're one of the
Uh,
witnesses?
so I'm one of the people that runs the servers that has the consensus algorithm that's running on it to go basically build the blockchain and define what information is being stored on here, and then helping to distribute that information to everybody.
So conceivably, if you and 13 other people decided you wanted to game the system, you could.
Correct.
I mean, that doesn't seem very secure to me, Blair. Let me ask you this. Blair is your real name?
Yes.
Okay. And what is this Light Razors?
Oh, light hacker?
Well, yeah, Light
Or
Hacker.
lightweight? So I started on Facebook. I've been like an active political activist since I basically really got my start while down in Texas. I went down to the ranch in Crawford. I forget the woman's name, but her son died in the Iraq War. Sat outside of Crawford and said, "I'm not leaving until I got answers." And there were protests down there.
Yeah,
So
I
I've been
recall that actually. Yeah.
And so I've been protesting since then, and I started on Facebook. I've used the handle aggroed for a long time. I started as aggroed, but then I got shadow banned off of Facebook. So I started at aggroed occupy, then I did aggroed reoccupy, then I did aggroed anonymous, then aggroed anonymous, aggroed occupy the book, and then lastly aggroed light hacker. So every time I'd get up to something like 2,000 Facebook followers, they would do an ID check. All the people that I followed ended up like tagging themselves in memes and things like that. So they would ask me to go, look at a meme and say, which one of your friends is this? And it was that's a way to go get rid of activists. So it was my sixth choice of a name in terms of where that comes from.
All right. And then, so this avatar that you're using on Facebook, is this the Archangel Michael, or what is this?
No, I'm not. It's a blue angel, right? Like cool art. I just felt like it's a good avatar for somebody that's trying to go fight for a better world.
That's not the Archangel Michael.
I'm not saying it's not. I would say I didn't choose it because it is. If somebody were to come around and say this is absolutely Archangel Michael, I would say that could be true. I did not pick it for religious intent.
Right, but you're part of Anonymous, I presume? You've got this non-Servian. That was another avatar that you used?
Yeah, I mean, I think I certainly would think of myself as part of the anonymous army of people that go out there and try to go inform other human beings of, there are secret societies on this planet. There are banksters that cause harm, that democracy is not as simple as one might think it would be, and that there's a long and sort of shitty history of how this government and how this planet is being operated. So a hacker that's running around and sort of destroying like world governments and other places, no. But am I a dude that sits at a computer looking through like absolute massive reams of data all the freaking time, trying to figure out what's going on in the world and sharing my findings? Yes.
Okay. And so you work with Manuel Chavez, I guess?
I don't know who that is.
DeFango?
What's that?
DeFango?
Nope.
You don't know who that is?
Nope.
You've been on Steemit for 2 years and you never heard of Manuel Chavez or DeFango?
Who's the second person?
Manuel Chavez or DeFango?
No, I don't know who those
How
people
long
are.
have you been watching Crowdsource the Truth?
I don't know, a couple weeks.
All right. Well, I mean, it's interesting information that you're sharing. I mean, you haven't told me anything that has me convinced that it's not a Ponzi scheme. You've actually reinforced my belief that you and 13 other people could be gaming the system on Steemit.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly the potential that can happen.
Let me ask you this. Do you know Frank Bacon? You know Ty Rowan? Have you ever heard of that guy?
Frank Bacon. What's the other name?
Ty Rowan is what he told me his real name is. Ty, Tyroan. But I suspect he probably wasn't being truthful. Do you know him, Frank Bacon?
I don't know that name. I certainly interacted with him online.
Is he one of these people that is checking the transactions or whatever it is?
you can find the list of accounts that are doing that. If you type in steemd.com, it'll bring up the list of witnesses and the top witnesses. So there's 20 witnesses that are currently basically building the blockchain, and then there's that get rotated in. But the 20 people that you should be most concerned about are the top 20 people that are on that list.
Well, I'm talking to one of them, right?
Yeah, and so I think I'm currently number 9. It changes with some frequency. The last time I checked this morning, I was number 9. So there's 20 that they're in order of it's a delegated proof of stake. So everybody has stake, which just means they have some number of tokens, which represents some amount of ownership, and then they basically vote. So it's sort of like, if you hold 1 share of IBM and I hold 1,000 shares of IBM, and there's a stockholder meeting, like the guy that has 1,000 shares has a much stronger vote than the person that has 1. And so that's how this system works too. That
doesn't it allow existing users to prevent new users from really gaining any clout on the platform if they don't like that person, or for whatever reason they might choose?
The people that have a higher amount of stake certainly have the ability to reduce the rewards of people that have less.
Doesn't that seem unfair?
I don't know how to define fair. I mean, this is a system that I've worked in for 2 years, so it's certainly frustrating for new users that don't have any ownership of this thing to then at times get bullied by people that have larger accounts.
Well, you've just hit on something important.
Well, oftentimes when I see people get bullied by people with larger accounts, if they are just getting bullied for we don't like your opinion, so we're silencing you, the community is actually pretty good about rallying to the folks that have been sort of flagged and get their post rewards removed or reduced.
All right. Now, what about cases where someone's posting information that's just patently untrue, libelous, defamatory? This is an indelible digital record, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't really get rid of things that are over 7 days old.
Right. So basically, I need to rely on a community of unknown people, 14 of which could operate in collusion to game the whole entire system. I need to rely on a community of unknown, mostly anonymous people to downvote someone who has posted something completely false that says that a particular person is a Mossad agent or a pedophile or whatever. And that material can stay on the internet in perpetuity with no repercussion, no board of directors, no legal department, no ability for that individual to take civil or legal action against Steemit. Is that right? Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I'm not a legal expert, so I can't tell you what your repercussions are.
You're sure you've never spoken to Manuel Chavez and have never heard of Defango? He's all over the cryptocurrency thing on YouTube and DTube, and he's quite active on Steemit.
I don't know. Is that the handle that he goes by? I mean, I wouldn't know any of these people by their first names. I would know them by what their Steemit handle is.
Yeah, Defango is his Steemit handle. What about Titus Frost? Do you know him?
Yeah, I know Titus, or at least I know of him. I haven't met him in person. I've interacted with him on Discord a couple times, but I don't know him to any extent beyond that.
So you're telling me that you're involved with the Anonymous Collective. You're a hacker.
Well,
you're working with or aware of or spoken with and communicated with Titus Frost. You're one of a potential group of 14 that could be gaming the system on Steemit. You're unaware of any legal process that someone who has been defamed permanently, something that I consider a new form of per se libel, indelible per se libel, something that I intend to work very hard to try to get legislation passed to incarcerate people who engage in this activity. You've admitted that you've seen multiple instances of bullying on this platform. I don't think you're doing a very good job of convincing me of anything, Blair.
Well, okay. Well, I'm not here to necessarily convince you of anything. I mean, my point is to try to answer some questions that I'm trying to go answer.
All right. Where does the money come from? How is Steemit? See, because to me, what doesn't make sense about it inherently is, like with Napster, a peer-to-peer decentralized mechanism. I understand how that works. I install the Napster software on my computer. I connect to the internet, and now I'm part of a decentralized network where I am both hosting files and able to access files. And if I add new MP3 files to the Napster network, I'm enhancing the value of that network. Now, in the case of Steemit, what I don't understand is, and DTube, if I add, as I do to YouTube, let's say 60 to 90 minutes of high definition video per day, sometimes more, if I add that to that network, on the one hand, I could be adding value to it, but if it's 60 to 90 minutes of a carpet, I could just be uploading that and filling up YouTube servers and really just costing Google money, and maybe no one's looking at my videos. So with Steemit, if I keep adding videos to Steemit, should I be earning money from that or no?
Well, it's a mix. So it's not just determined by the value, how you get. All right, so let's go back to the beginning. When it started, they went and they made it so that you could mine this token. And for something like 6 months, the way that people were able to go get new tokens was primarily through mining, but you could also do it through posting. And the way that works is that once people have tokens, they have a small amount of inflation that's on the network. And so there's something like 270 million tokens that are on the network. There's a roughly 10% inflation. I think it's closer to 9 right now, but for math, we'll call it 10%.
What determines that rate of inflation?
It's built in. It's hardwired into the code for the blockchain. It's built into the hard fork. Mm-hmm. So there's a 9. It started at 10%, then it goes down to 9, then it goes down to 9, and then it keeps going down over time. So I think it ends up at less after like 18 years or something. But so people mine this, people trade this, people look at these tokens and think that they have value, so they trade them. But there's also inflation that's on the network. So when you upvote somebody, what you're actually doing is saying, I control this much of the blockchain because I have this much stake, and out of that inflation that's getting rewarded today, I want my portion of this to go to these posts that I like. So it's sort of like, so going back to IBM stock, IBM has dividends, right? So, you never think of like applying your dividend to somebody else. You own the stock and you just own it. And so you would get the dividend. Here it's like, okay, well, I have this inflation, I have this dividend that's coming my way, but it's generally frowned upon to just give it to yourself. What most people have expectations of is that you will go vote for other people, and you basically are assigning the dividend that's coming your way to other posts and providing value that way. So in order for your post to get any value on the Steem blockchain, you basically need to get some exposure so that people see your content. People have to think that it's valuable, and you ultimately have to go work with some of the people that have larger stake on the network so that the amount of inflation that they can point towards your post is high enough to be a meaningful amount of money. So where do the post rewards come from? Again, we have a certain amount of tokens in circulation. It's about 270 million. There's roughly 10% inflation, so that means that every year there's roughly 30 million tokens. Or this year there's roughly 30 million tokens that get created over a 52-week period. That's how many Steem tokens are distributed, and then based off of the votes that you receive, that's how much value your posts are going to get.
Where is the content hosted? Because as a participant in Steemit, I'm not hosting Steemit content on my computer.
No, that's what the witnesses are building, right? So it's on, all of your content is stored in, ultimately the program is based off of Graphene, which is like a giant database server. And what the witnesses are basically doing is taking the posts that you've put together and then adding that to the Graphene database server. And that's ultimately what the blockchain is. It's the giant ledger of all of this stuff. So you're right, you don't have to, unlike some of these other ones like Redcoin, if I wanted to go use Redcoin, I would have to go download the entire blockchain. And that's the only way that becomes usable. But what you're able to do basically is work through a variety of websites that have access to the entire blockchain and you're just using these websites as a convenient interface rather than having to store the entire thing on your computer. Although you're certainly welcome to store the entire thing on your computer.
But I'm saying it doesn't make sense to me. Like, are people putting money into it? How are they paying for the servers as this network grows and expands? I mean, obviously something like Facebook, someone owns that. Mark Zuckerberg got investors, whatever. They own data centers. They have tons of computers. Every day people are adding content. People are adding videos. People are adding photos, posts. They're constantly buying more hard drives, buying more computers. The thing that I was getting at is if I add video content, whether it's Gone with the Wind or my carpet for 2 hours, it does stand to reason. I think most people would agree, even if you dislike Gone with the Wind, as a piece of motion picture content, it's got more value than 2 hours of looking at a carpet. But there's nothing stopping me from 2 hours of looking at a carpet. And just this upvoting, downvoting, I don't understand how that generates money that's used to purchase hard drives to store material. You're saying the witnesses are storing the material?
Yeah, I mean, anybody that is running the
So
application,
14 people or 20 people are storing the whole entire network of the thing?
Oh, there's several hundred. It just happens to be that the top 20 witnesses are the people that can actually make changes to the blockchain.
Changes?
So
I thought you can't make changes to the blockchain.
You need consensus of 17 people. You can make changes to any of these blockchains. That's what a hard fork is.
I
So
see.
you can change the operating system. You can change how these things function. But at least in terms of Steam, you need 17 out of the top 20 witnesses to all agree.
It seems like such a low number. How many witnesses does Bitcoin need to make something happen?
You still need. I actually don't know the number off the top of my head. I think when they were looking at SegWit, you needed something like 90 to 95% of the user base to agree.
So it's like hundreds of thousands or millions.
Yeah, but remember that this is through an election process. So basically, people are delegating their stake and saying, I'm proxying my vote to these people.
Yes, but
So
my premise is that this was started by a collection of individuals who had a plan to game this system from the beginning. So if those individuals who are rigging the system are electing the people who are monitoring the system, that doesn't make me feel better. Versus Bitcoin, where I get it that it takes a lot of time, but we've got millions of verifications, that just becomes impractical that you would be able to get a consensus among millions. I could collect 17 people who have like-minded intentions quite easily. I could do that in an afternoon. And if I motivated them with money, I could probably find many more than 17 people. So what I'm getting at is, do you know Dan Larimer? Have you spoken to or worked with him?
I know of him. He created, BitShares. He created Steam and created EOS.
Right. What's the other guy, Ned or something?
What's that?
What's the other guy who's the CEO, Ned?
Ned. So Ned and Dan created this thing. So I recently looked at, people have been complaining about how Steam was created from like literally day one. And what they were trying to do is basically, if you look at cryptocurrency now, the SEC is going to go after a lot of these groups because ICOs are basically unregistered securities that are getting promoted.
Right.
And if you promote a security, there's like criminal activity that's all around that. So some of these guys that have done their ICOs, and literally like each stage of the ICO, when you're doing your pre-release, your private release, the public release, that's an early where you get a bonus and then you go to the next round. Like each one of those is a separate SEC issuance of a stock issuance or something like that. So every single one of those represents a time where there's like you need to have a registered security for each and every single one of those rounds. And so there's tons of people that are in this space that have created an assload of liability for themselves because they're creating unregistered securities and then selling them, and a lot of people can get busted for that. And so one of the ways to go sort of get around that is to go is to do this through mining. And if you open this thing through mining, and it's not like everybody owns the the tokens to begin with, and you don't issue it in like, I'm keeping 1 million and you're keeping 1 million and my buddy's keeping 1 million. If you do it through mining, then it's not considered that same sort of issuance, and so you're not under the same laws. So what they did at the very beginning of this to go avoid basically what all these other ICOs are experiencing right now is they did we in the community we call it a ninja mine. So what they did is they said, okay, anybody can mine. They did public announcements through Bitcoin Talk, and they said anybody that wants to go mine this token has the ability to go do so. But then they didn't spend hundreds of hours trying to help everybody figure out how to mine it. And so they were trying to figure out how do we issue this? How do we make it so that it's legal? How do we do it so that we can also maintain a fairly high proportion of ownership, which is what Dan and Ned wanted to do. And they figured out how to go do that legally, and it was basically a workaround for ICO laws. So part of the reason why we have this, the community has sort of a bad name because we've been called a Ponzi scheme basically from day one.
Well, you've just described that they've specifically and intentionally created a workaround for laws.
Well, yeah, but people do that all the time. I mean, it's not, what they did wasn't illegal. They did this in a legal way to try to go make it so that the liability of having a security, I mean, a lot of the groups that have done ICOs now have enormous personal liability. They could face jail time. I mean, the SEC doesn't tend to play around with people that do unregistered securities. So a lot of these ICOs are in great jeopardy, and so they sort of must have had a crystal ball to go look ahead and say, what these people are doing through their typical ICO is both illegal, dangerous, and adds a lot of liability. So I think that they actually made some smart choices looking at the legal groundwork that they were working with to say, well, we want to do this, we want to do it legally, how do we do this? And that's how they basically came up with this system of, we're going to start by mining, we're going to make sure that anybody that wants to mine this thing has the ability to go do so, and then they just didn't spend hundreds of hours teaching everybody how to mine, and that's not their responsibility anyways.
Well, I don't imagine that they'd spend hundreds of hours teaching people to mine, but if they are legitimately hoping that people will have an opportunity to participate, they need to provide the resources so that people can at least figure it out for themselves. Did they not do that?
Well, they did that. I mean, there's plenty of different whales that are on the Steem blockchain that got there because they were mining from day one, because of Steemit Incorporated.
How many whales?
Well, it's tough to know exactly. I would say that there's roughly 100 accounts or more that have been around from the very beginning that have more Steem than most of the others.
So that's certainly more than 17.
Oh, it's certainly more than 17. I mean, the witnesses are just people that run servers. Like when I started as a witness, something like 8 months ago, maybe a year ago, like I had 5,000 Steem power on the network. Like you don't need much of anything to go run a server for this thing.
How do you gain more Steem power?
Yeah, I mean, now after 2 years of doing this, I'm at something like 90,000 on my main account.
90,000 Steem power. Hello?
No, that's correct. I heard you.
So you're at 90,000 Steem power, and then you're saying, what, that people can't get more Steem power now, or?
Oh, no, there's plenty of opportunity. I mean, people are posting, they'll get $30, $40, $50 on a post. You know, people that are brand new typically are making pennies. People that have been around for a while typically make dollars. And people that have, a good example is somebody like David Pakman. David Pakman is sort of this progressive, liberal, talking head on a radio. He runs radio stations. He's got a couple TV shows, does a lot of interviews, and he had 400,000 YouTube subscribers.
Right.
So not long ago, he comes to Steem. He starts putting Steem links in his posts so that people can find him, and he's basically marketing for the network. And as a consequence of that, the people that have a lot of stakes started rewarding his posts pretty heavily. So in not that long, he went from 0 Steem to several thousand Steem because people were rewarding his content.
Right.
So,
Well, that's one way of looking at it, but that also seems to fit quite well with my theory that these 100 whales who control enough power on the network to influence it in a variety of the ways that we've been discussing could, through a marketing network, basically identify social media influencers like the guy you've just described and, convince him through some means, either direct or indirect, that he should be on Steemit, and then reward that person when they get to Steemit to create the impression for others that, hey, look, you're going to make money here on Steemit, so you should be on there. And I presume, without, admittedly knowing all the ins and outs and details of how it works exactly, the more people that are on the network, the more demand there is for this cryptocurrency, the more valuable it will become, right?
that's the general principle. You can go with the Trace Mayer put out a theory for Bitcoin that basically the social media values follow Metcalfe's law, which states when you double the number of users, you quadruple the price.
I see.
So from Facebook followed that model. Bitcoin seems to be following that model. The fax machine followed that model. The telephone followed that model.
Right.
I would argue Beam is likely to follow that model as well. And so, yes, very much so, that as you add more people to this network, the value of that token should go up.
Right. Now, so let me ask you something else that might be difficult to answer. I've got, not that many, I wouldn't say that I'm a social media influencer, but I've got 55,000 subscribers on YouTube. I'm looking at a particular video here that I posted 3 weeks ago on YouTube, has 26,000 views. I put the same video on Steemit via DTube, and it's been there for 20 days, $0. Why would that be?
Because you have to build a network. This website is as much about networking with other people and having a community and sort of growing alongside of other folks as it is about putting on quality content.
Do you know who Boris in Taipei is? Do you know who Steam White is? Do you know who TT Narcy is? I find it strange that the only people that are able to find my content are these people, and they're all downvoting and preventing it from earning any money. It seems to me like they've set up a network that is a monetized network that deals in a financial instrument that can be converted into US dollars through some cryptocurrency exchange. And it also seems to me that you're describing a variety of mechanisms in which relatively small networks of people can control how this thing earns money and can engage in some pretty unfair business practices. And it seems to me like a relatively small network of individuals have targeted my company on here and prevented it from engaging in fair interaction with the rest of the community.
The people that, I don't know all the people that you're describing.
Do you know any of them? Do you know Boris in Taipei? Do you know who that is?
No, the only one of the names that you've mentioned that I know is Frank Bacon. And he's not, he has probably a couple thousand Steam power. He's not a major account. I think the challenge for you is trying to find a network with other people that actually have some Steam power to show, hey, I create good content. Look at the stories that I'm telling. Look at the conversations that I'm having with field.
The actual challenge for me is going to be to find evidence to prove my theories, because right now you haven't opened my eyes to some revelation that makes me think that I'm wrong. And if there is criminal activity going on with this Steemit network, I'm confident that there are many people, possibly like yourself, who are unaware of that. But
I'm not criminal activity. I think what you're describing is some of the challenges on the network is getting started. Getting started here is brutal. It took me 8 months. I wrote a post about how in 5 posts I collectively made 7 cents at the start. So, talking from somebody that it took me time, just like starting a brand new business. Even if you have the single best content in the world, if you only have 1 or 2 followers, nobody's going to see it.
Well, it seems I've got about 6, but they all are consistently downvoting the content. It's quite interesting.
I can't explain why they're doing that. But again, none of those
I
people are
can.
like, what's that?
I can.
Why would six people randomly be downvoting you?
I
And
didn't
none of
say it
whom
was
are.
random. I didn't say it was random. Let's talk for a minute about DTube. Who runs DTube?
Okay.
Is it directly connected to Steemit, or is it a separate thing?
Well, it's a decentralized app that's running on top of the Steam blockchain. And I don't know the person's real name, but they go by the handle Heimendanger. And
So
they
this is
they
another issue
are
that I have with these large public-facing companies that are run by anonymous people. What happens if someone puts a video on DTube that defames me, that accuses me of crimes that they use to generate false evidence to try to implicate me in a crime? I think that this is an anonymous network that has at very least been infiltrated by criminal conspiracies, that is operating very effectively to do damage to their enemies, to give rewards to their friends, to act in a collective manner, in part in the ways that you've described on this phone call. And I think it's got some real serious problems that need to be looked at. If
yeah.
you've got the
So I'm not.
ability to put me in touch with Dan Larimer or Ned, whatever his name is, I'm going to ask for you to please do that. You haven't said anything on this call that makes me believe anything other than you are an industrious individual who wants to utilize this platform to succeed. But at the same time, you haven't changed my opinion that I feel like there are multiple indicators that at very least there are people with criminal intent operating within this network, and there are many shortcomings in it that allow them to flourish.
There are certainly shortcomings to the network. So I'm trying not to sugarcoat anything and just trying to have an honest dialogue with
No,
you
and I
about.
appreciate that. I appreciate that. If you can put me in touch with Dan Larimer or the other principals at the company, I'd love to hear about that. I'd love to do that. I'm very curious to know how this network is able to scale. You know, it's an interesting thing because I've posted 1,
Oh,
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 videos on DTube. When I first went on to DTube, no, sorry, there's more. Some of them have been hidden due to downvotes, which is
so did
interesting.
they explain why they were downvoting?
Some of them did. Let's take a look. Frank
And again,
Bacon. Let's see here. How do we get to these
the
posts?
thing. Dan is no longer part of Steam. He still has an account here, but he
So,
left
all
to go
right,
do
you want to know why they downvoted. Frank Bacon says, flagging this post in retaliation to a flag you initiated last month. So there was a video that I downvoted. I don't know exactly which one it was. I'm sure it was one of these videos that say I'm a Mossad agent and a pedophile that present no evidence to support those false allegations. And so he's admitting right here that he's taking retaliatory malicious action against me, irrespective of the content of the video. And as a matter of fact,
Yeah,
this was a video that should support the goals that Steemit has. It's a video called YouTube Smashes Charles Walton's First Amendment Rights. Charles Walton is a content creator who was on YouTube for 10 years. And through anonymous complaints about his videos, he got taken off of YouTube. So I felt Steemit and DTube are the perfect platform. This censorship-free platform would be perfect to share Charles Walton's message. But this malicious person, Frank Bacon, has admittedly taken retaliatory action, and this isn't the only place where he's done this.
yeah. So that happens on the network pretty frequently. If you flag somebody else for whatever reason, they go back and they flag you. There's like consequences to how you act on the blockchain. So if your first interactions on
But
here
there
are
are no
flagging,
consequences to these anonymous individuals in the real world. I really object to you saying there are consequences to how you act on the blockchain. This is anonymous rule of law. This is a hacker collective rule of law, and I do not agree to be a part of this hacker collective. This hacker collective exists in a society on planet Earth and in the United States of America, which is governed by laws, including the Constitution. And I
I don't.
disagree that these anonymous internet entities are protected by freedom of speech because the
What?
Constitution cannot be gerrymandered, and the Constitution does not apply to people who are not citizens of the United States. So inherently, if you are an anonymous entity on the internet, you could be an artificial intelligence, you could be a Chinese citizen, you could be a Canadian citizen. None of these things are protected by the Constitution. However, I as an American citizen. I am protected. I am innocent until proven guilty, and I have the right to face my accusers, not these cowardly anonymous hackers who come on here and try to create a money-making situation that you have described in great detail is very easily rigged by a small number of people who you have also told me regularly act in a retaliatory manner with no consequences, no real legal consequences of any kind. They operate with impunity, maliciously. This is a problem, Blair. I'm going to tell you something. I'd like you to put me in touch with Dan Larimer, and I want somebody to explain to me how this isn't illegal. Because I'm also going to let you know that I'm in direct contact with the FBI about this. So Dan Larimer might be a very smart guy in terms of figuring out how to make his blockchain and how to mine it so he keeps the overwhelming majority of the value in the network, and how to put out a network of individuals to promote this thing, to create an AstroTurf false grassroots movement that might in fact include the same type of anonymous AI technology attacking channels like Charles Walton, attacking channels like the Health Ranger, attacking channels like Crowdsource the Truth, just as they have in this Steem environment. There's a lot of evidence to indicate that that's happening because they want to drive more users to their platform to increase the value of their worthless currency. That's what I think.
I think you're going to pretty far extremes in terms of what you think is going on.
Okay.
I mean, from been in here for 2 years, I'd argue something like you have 5 pretty small accounts that after you flag them are flagging you back. That happens all the time to beginners that come here thinking that this is just the same social media that you have on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. You could be as vitriolic or talk about whatever you want.
I don't think I was vitriolic. I put up a video about Charles Walton being suppressed in his First Amendment right and by being attacked by similar anonymous complaints that may or may not be protected by the Constitution or even necessarily be human beings or may not even be more than just one malicious person. And I think there's a problem with YouTube, but YouTube has lawyers that I can contact. YouTube has shareholders that are, needing to comply with laws. Here, we've got a bunch of anonymous people running an anonymous network that's taking malicious action against people, and the problem is with me?
Well, I'm saying that, it seems like it started with you. If you started by just the very first thing on
Oh, it started with me. I see. All right, listen, Blair, I appreciate you calling me. What I'm going to ask you to do is please have Dan Larimer, what's Ned's last name?
Scott, but Dan's not part of
Have one of those two guys contact me because the phone call that we're having right now is going to be added to my evidence that I'm presenting to the FBI. I'm going to publish it on the internet. And I'm not accusing you of anything, but I'm considering you a witness in this matter. Right now, I consider you an innocent participant. And I suspect that this is a Ponzi scheme, that it was planned as a Ponzi scheme by the individuals that created it. And I'm still going to hold them innocent until it's proven that they're guilty, but I am accumulating evidence that causes me to believe this. Obviously, I'm not a court of law, so I don't have the ability to determine if they're innocent or guilty. But I am going to bring this evidence to the FBI. I am going to try to bring it to the SEC, and I suspect that these very clever guys are able to develop software more quickly than Congress is able to develop legislation. But unless they can convince me that I'm wrong, I'm going to work very hard to see to it that Congress does develop legislation so that anonymous entities that want to take malicious action against innocent citizens of the United States and take advantage of people and create schemes whereby they can control something of value that is a currency that should be regulated by the SEC. And we'll let them decide.
I don't know. So a couple things. So Dan no longer works for Steemit.
I don't care. He developed it.
Great. So the best way to go contact him is through his Telegram group that you can find on eos.io or something.
I actually think that the best way for me to contact him is going to be for the FBI to ask him these questions if he doesn't want to answer them, because I'm not getting into Telegram. I sent the guy an email. I tried to find a phone number for him. I'm not dealing with Telegram. I don't like these anonymous, I'm not getting into Discord. If this guy can't answer a telephone or an email, we'll see if the FBI can get onto Telegram and contact him.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're barking up the wrong tree. Because I
Why do
don't
you
think
think
you're going
that?
to end up with a giant Ponzi scheme. I think that they did things legally. They did it by the book. And ultimately what ended up happening is that it you like come to a platform where you don't understand the culture, you attack other people, and then they
No,
didn't
no, no,
welcome your
no. First
content.
of all, I didn't attack other people. I downvoted a video that had
It's exactly
slanderous and libelous information about me that was totally untrue, that's allowed to proliferate through this network because it encourages anonymous individuals to do whatever the hell they want without any repercussions, because there's no way to identify these individuals. It's very difficult to get in touch with the people that control this network. And there's a network of operatives, salespeople, whatever you want to call them, who are out in the world promoting it through a variety of methods that I find unethical. And I'm not in law enforcement. Sorry?
the challenge here is that the things that you're fighting are also about free speech, that the ability to
No,
go
you're
say what
wrong. No.
you want
It
to
is
get
not
not
covered by free speech for you to proliferate false criminal accusations that are unvetted, unsupported by evidence. That's not free speech. Free speech doesn't mean you can say whatever the hell you want. I can't go publish an article in the newspaper publicly that says that Blair is a bank robber, a schemer, and a criminal. That is per se libel. That is a civil tort. And if I assemble a network of operatives to call you and give out your mother's phone number on the internet and come to your house and publish your home address and call you a faggot and a fucking Jew in posts that can't be dealt with, that's harassment. And that is a crime. Okay? So I want you to do a little more research and figure out which side of this you're on and help me
well,
get in front of it and figure out that I am actually wrong, because there's some serious problems with this network that need to be addressed immediately if these guys don't want someone with more authority than me to investigate it.
no, I mean they're certainly welcome to go investigate. I think that they're going to find
I'm
there's going to
glad
be
that
the
the
same.
FBI has your permission to investigate it, because I'm going to bring everything I know about this to their attention, and I'm working very hard to learn as much as I can about it. Tell me what you think about Tone Vay's evaluation of Steemit. He thinks it's a Ponzi scheme.
I've heard him. Well, he's a Bitcoin maximalist and seems to hate everything that isn't Bitcoin. So I follow him at times. I haven't seen him say that Steam is a Ponzi. Although
I can't
that
believe that
doesn't.
you've been so active in Steemit for 2 years and you don't know that this guy has been calling it a Ponzi scheme and debating Dan and Ned. I find that difficult to believe.
Well, uh, I'm not saying that I disagree that he's saying it. I haven't personally seen where he said it. But I mean, I like Tone. I mean, it's frustrating that he would say that about this network, but that's people come to this place if they don't have a good experience every time, and it's hard to get started here, and so people say it's a Ponzi and leave. That's actually like a pretty typical starting challenge. You know, that happens.
What kind of work did you do at BBC Earth?
I did not work at BBC Earth. You can't, like, the Facebook profile is just filled with silly things at times.
Why are you putting misleading things on your Facebook page, telling people you worked places that you didn't work? What was your role at Tesla Nova?
I worked with one of the founders of that thing. It's a Facebook group.
So why are you mixing legitimate work experience with illegitimate work experience? BBC is an internationally known. It seems to me that you're falsifying your credentials here. For what purpose?
I can take that off. It doesn't
Well,
matter.
I'm not imploring you to take it off. I'm just curious why you're misrepresenting where you've worked.
It's something that I did like 8 years ago, and it's part of like going through multiple Facebook iterations of just, I don't know.
Putting
Somebody sent
fake
me.
job experience on there is part of. I don't understand.
No, what it was trying to get to be friends with certain people at a time when Facebook was shadow banning people.
So by fooling them into thinking that you worked at the BBC, that's how you try to become friends with people?
I mean, please don't jump to as many conclusions.
I'm asking you questions. Why would you put that there?
The way that look, you're going back 6 years in my memory, but the way that worked was that at some point somebody was trying to verify, did I work at this place that other guy worked? Because if I didn't do those kinds of things,
What
I
other
would have
guy?
gotten.
What other guy?
Oh, Jesus, it's like 10,000 different followers that I have. So
So
there's
you're
no
saying
way for me to
someone
know.
was trying to verify that you worked at a place that some other guy worked, and you didn't, so you essentially lied and said to 10,000 people who were looking at you on Facebook that you worked at BBC. Am I understanding that explanation?
Something to that effect, but it was
Okay,
a way to
so
go.
you lied on Facebook, and now you're calling me to tell me things about Steemit. Why should I expect that you're not lying now?
You can have whatever expectation you want. I mean, again, the challenge is Facebook is a censorship-prone existence. In order to go build a follower and to not get banned, there were times that I would have to go say, yes, I know this person. Yes, I know them through this network, or else face getting shadow banned off of that.
Okay, so let me understand this. Let me understand this. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure I understand. So because Facebook is a platform that's plagued by censorship, you need to lie to convince them of things that aren't true, that you have experience that you don't have, that you know people that you don't know, in order to circumvent the situation there on Facebook. Now, I can tell you that I got on Facebook in the same exact way that I got onto Steemit. I just started going on there. There was not a collective of individuals who had undue control over Facebook, who were unanswerable to their actions, who operated anonymously, who prevented me from building a network on Facebook. But that does exist on Steemit. And now here you, a self-appointed
Same.
representative of Steemit, has contacted me to tell me about how you lied to game the system on Facebook to achieve your goals, but that's not happening on Steemit. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, I mean, people lie on Steemit too. I don't mean to say that they don't. I mean, Steemit has the exact same challenges that other social media platforms have, where people will either say bad things about you or write bad things about you or hurt your feels. These things happen.
Yes, but
You
when
know,
someone does that on Facebook, it doesn't prevent you from earning money. That strikes me as an unfair business practice that is inherent to a network that can be controlled by a minimum of 17 people.
yeah, there's challenges there. You ultimately have to go trust the other people that are part of the Steam network.
The same
To
people
go
that you're
build in.
telling me now are actively engaged in lying in social media. Is that who I have to trust, Blair? Do I have to trust you that you've just told me that you've lied?
I have certainly lied on Facebook.
Thank
I
you.
don't think that I've ever lied on. I don't think that I've ever lied on Steemit.
See, but the problem is
But
when you admit to me that you've lied and then you tell me, but you're not lying now, how do I know that that statement itself isn't a lie? Listen, Blair, I appreciate what you're trying to do. This call is going nowhere, nowhere that you want it to go. You haven't convinced me that Steemit is anything other than exactly what I think it is. And I wish you luck. I wish you the best. I will publish this phone call because you've given me valuable testimony that's going to be important in my ongoing investigative journalism investigation of this, the results of which will be shared with law enforcement if law enforcement, well, irrespective of what law enforcement determines, I'm going to share this. It's up to them whether or
yeah,
not there are crimes happening and they'll investigate and they'll do anything. I can't say that they will. And this is not a threat in any way. I'm just letting you know what I'm going to do.
yeah, I had no expectation otherwise. I've just tried to give you the best answers I can.
I appreciate that.
I think you've gone off the deep end, getting flagged a couple times and thinking, oh God, this is
No, I think you don't understand the full extent of what I'm describing. I'm not going off the deep end from getting flagged. I've identified that the people doing the flagging are people that are taking action against me in the real world, action that I believe rises to the level of criminal action. They have warned me that harm would come to me if I proceeded in doing what I'm doing, which includes investigating this network that they are trying to protect. And
who's that way?
I've spoken to you about all of these people during this phone call, and once it gets published, probably on Steemit, although it's interesting because DTube no longer allows me to post videos. It's very strange. This anonymous person that you've described, that no one knows who he is, could possibly, like you did, identify that I'm speaking badly of the beloved Steem blockchain, and perhaps has now prevented me from uploading videos. But because that person is anonymous, because there is no technical support, even email, no way to communicate with this company or this anonymous hacker collective or whatever it is.
Not an anonymous collective.
It's not.
Actually,
It's not an
yeah,
anonymous collective. Is it a group of people who are operating on there under anonymity?
it's pseudo-anonymity, right? Like every single action that I've ever taken on this blockchain, you can all turn that back and say, this is what Agro
How can I
posted, this
find
is
out
what...
who Frank Bacon is so I can serve him with a civil lawsuit or
I
bring the
don't
attention
find,
of the authorities to the fact that he's called me and threatened me? How do I find out who Frank Bacon is from the blockchain?
well, you can't find out directly who he is from the blockchain, but you know that every single action that Frank has taken on the blockchain, it's all recorded in a public ledger. So if
Yes,
he's
but
threatening
he
you,
enters the first time he comes in the door. He's behind some anonymous identity. So I can see everything that this anonymous identity did, but I don't need to see everything that he did. I only care about the things he's done to me. But the fact is, this network creates a degree of protection for those that want to act anonymously, even if their actions are malicious. And it offers no protection for those they would act against. That's a problem.
there's
This is a
certainly some
harassment network, Blair. That's what it is.
it's
And
a
it
harassment.
might, in fact, be a racketeering, influenced, corrupt organization because through that harassment, these individuals are able to prevent others from earning money and themselves earn money. There are a lot of serious concerns here. If you've got the ability to reach Dan Larimer or Ned, whatever his name is, please do and ask them to contact me. You can give them this number. You can give them my email address. I appreciate you reaching out. I don't mean to sound angry, but I am angry.
Yeah, you sound it. I mean, I think you're just having a rough start to the network. But
Yeah. I
I,
think if you
you
think
know,
that you don't understand the full extent of what's gone on, or you're trying to convince me of something that's not accurate. So
well,
I'm
I
gonna
mean,
err on the side of presuming that you're innocent because I have no evidence to prove that you're guilty of anything, and you seem like a nice guy who is trying to make an effort at earning money and expanding his social network here on Steemit.
well, and also thinking that other people can do the same. I mean, there's thousands of people that have started on here with absolutely nothing, and then been able to go put together,
I don't
literally
dislike
like
Steemit because it's
people.
blocking me. I dislike Steemit because I think it's an unfair system that was rigged from the beginning that's being controlled by a small group of malicious individuals. And you've just described to me a way in which those individuals, even if they don't own and didn't create the network, could very easily infiltrate it, influence a small group, and essentially take control of the thing.
Yeah,
Why would the
that is
creators allow something like that to happen so easily? It doesn't make sense.
um, I don't think it's that easy. I mean, it
17
took me.
people, and you've been at it for 2 years? That's pretty damn easy, particularly if you knew those guys from the beginning.
Yeah, well, I didn't know them from the beginning
No,
because
I'm
I
not
came in six
suggesting that
months.
you did. I'm suggesting that some of these nefarious individuals, including Frank Bacon, did because he's essentially said as much in threatening phone
Well, they're
calls
not.
to me.
You're mentioning aren't witnesses. They're not the people that are of the top
How do you
20.
know? These
And
are anonymous accounts. How many anonymous accounts can one person control? Could one person control 17 anonymous accounts and now one person can rig the whole thing?
yeah, that is a potential.
Okay.
That
Blair,
is.
listen, I appreciate what you're saying. I'm out of time. If you come up with more information that you'd like to share with me, I'm happy to speak with you again. Let me take a breath and take it down a notch. I'm not angry with you. I'm angry with the people that are doing this. And I hope that you're not one of them. I have no reason to believe that you are one of them. But I hope that you will take my message to Ned and Dan and tell them that I'd like to have a conversation with them to understand what it is that I don't know about this, to understand why I'm incorrect, or perhaps for them to be enlightened by some of the shortcomings that you and I and some other people have found in their network so they can shore them up and prevent this from happening. It's very possible that they're totally innocent guys who are trying to create a very industrious business, and I understand that's difficult. It's difficult to have a complicated piece of software. You need beta testers. It is in beta. I think there's a strong argument to be made that these guys could shore up these shortcomings, root out these anonymous individuals who are doing malicious things. Maybe there is, I don't know. Ask them to get in touch with me and we'll continue the conversation. I've got to run. Anything else you want to say?
No, I mean,
No.
I think that you've identified some good concerns about the network. I've had those same concerns basically since I've been here, and then ultimately have faith that the people that are acting on this platform are doing so in good faith. I'm sorry that you've had a different experience than that. That certainly happens too. But I don't think you're going to get anywhere with a giant FBI. This is a Ponzi scheme thing because they did it in a legal way and continue to do it in a legal way. If you're being harassed, that is unfortunate.
Right. The good news is I don't care what you think about that. And what I think is you should do yourself a favor and remove this BBC Earth work experience from your Facebook page and be honest with yourself and be honest with the people that you're representing yourself to on social media. Take care, Blair. I'll talk to you maybe soon.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Best.